Could we come to order, and do we have the order of business here? Thank you all. Pursuant to order of reference of Tuesday, May 10th, 2016, Bill C-15, an act to implement certain provisions of the budget tabled in Parliament on March 22nd, 2016, and other measures. And today we're to start clause by clause. But before we do, the third report of the Subcommittee on Agenda and Procedure was passed around to members. As members who were on that subcommittee would know, we met yesterday and we made some decisions as a subcommittee that we will now put to committee so that this this can be dealt with. Do I need to read it?
I'd move the adoption of the report just to get it on the floor.
Moved by Mr. McKinnon. It was agreed by the subcommittee that in relation to the motion of Guy Caron, that the committee agreed to amend the amendment of Steve McKinnon, and I'll not go through all the words, but that we proposed a list of witnesses for the KPMG study. That's point number one. Point number two is that the committee agreed to the motion by Mr. McColman that the Standing Committee on Finance invite the Parliamentary Budget Officer to appear on or before June 16th, 2016 for 2 hours to provide testimony and answer questions on recent reports. Thirdly, the committee agreed to a motion of Mr. McKinnon that the committee invite Mark Mashin, the new President and Chief Executive Officer of the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, as well as Heather Monroe Bloom, Chairperson of the CPP-IB Board of Directors, to appear as witnesses as soon as possible after the beginning of his mandate. Point four, we agreed on the theme of the pre-budget consultations for the 2017 budget. I'll not read them. They're on the record. Basically, that we would look at gaining economic growth in the country, and we would issue a news release to that effect on this Friday, and the clerk will provide the committee with the different options to consider in organizing hearings with witnesses and travel in the fall of 2016. So it's been so moved. Is there any discussion? Mr. Caron.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I just want to publicly express myself. I just wanted to publicly express myself on the fact that the original motion that I had tabled, I am still in favor of it, and I think it would have been a good idea to have a list of names that we'd received throughout the documents provided by KPMG, people who participated in that particular mechanism for the firm, but I recognize that the decision of the subcommittee was to propose an amended list of witnesses, including experts. Even though I didn't agree with the proposed change, I voted in favor of it in order to have at least one meeting with those experts and representatives of chartered professional accountants, as well as Michael Lammersley, who was associated with KPMG in the United States and who was the one who called attention to a similar situation which happened with a neighbor to the south.
Is there any further discussion on the subcommittee report? It's before you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So ordered. Then starting to on clause by clause. In terms of clause 1, pursuant to Standing Order 75-1, consideration of clause 1, the short title is postponed, and we'll start with clause 2. There's no amendments from clause 2 to 32. Does somebody want to discuss them as a block, or to You're moving, Ms. O'Connell. Mr. Caron.
J'aimerais retirer certains articles pour discussion.
I would like to withdraw certain clauses for discussion.
Okay, you'd like to what?
I would like to withdraw certain articles in order to be able to discuss them. 1 to 32 or 2 to 32?
2 to 32.
I would like to withdraw 7, 9, 10.
Slow down. 11, 9, 10.
7, 9, 10.
Yeah.
13, 22. 26, 27.
Okay. So then we will.
We should.
I have a motion then to.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can we have repeat the numbers of the clauses, please?
We'll go through them one by one. They are 7, 9, 10, 13, 22, 26, and 27. So could we have a motion to move clauses 2 to... Yes, we'd need unanimous consent on account of moving motion. Could we have unanimous consent to go to 2 to 6 and move them as one motion? Agreed? So moved. All those in favor of clause 2 to 6? Opposed? Carried. Motion 7, Mr. Caron.
Alors, simplement que c'est une...
I just want to say that this is a clause that wants to increase eligibility for exploration expenses for Canadian companies. That measure seems to be going against Canadian commitments to gradually move away from subsidizing fossil fuels, which is a government commitment. In our opinion, this is a new subsidy that was proposed by the Conservatives and that the Liberals did not really explain why they are continuing along this path. I just wanted to raise that in order to make it public and express our dissent with regard to that particular clause.
Discussion, Mr. Ouellette, and then Mr. Champagne.
It's just a question. I just can't hear you very well in this house, and I'm just hoping that they can turn up the speakers because this room seems to have a terrible speaker system rather than usual. And I know the earpiece, but I've never used it before.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't hear what article you're actually doing. Apologize.
7.
7.
Thank you.
Mr. Champagne.
For the benefit of the member to state our position, which has been to phase out in accordance with phase out the tax credit, as he said, for fossil fuel. I think that's what you're referring to. I think the position we've taken in the bill is very consistent with our commitment to phase them out in accordance with our international agreements with the OCDE and our G7 partners in that respect.
Mr. Leipert.
I think it's important that we go on record to correct what the NDP member referred to as a subsidy. It is not a subsidy, it is a tax credit, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? There's been no amendments, so shall clause 7 carry? You want, pardon, Guy? I can't hear you.
On division.
On division? Carried on division. Clause 8. Don't need a motion. Yeah. Shall clause 8 carry? Carried. Clause 9, Mr. Caron. You had a point you wanted to raise.
Non, j'ai pas de débat.
No debate. I just wanted to have a vote, a different vote.
Fine. Then shall clause 9 carry? On division? On division. Clause 10. Any comments to raise, or you just want to have a vote? Mr. Caron. Where does the Canadian Wheat Board come in? Because I have...
La raison pour laquelle je voulais parler dessus,
The reason I wanted to talk about that was just to say that we want to avoid having agricultural producers being affected by taxes that would be artificially higher because of this bad structure which was created by the previous government when it comes to privatizing the Canadian Wheat Board. And we are just disappointed that the government is going forward with these measures which confirm privatization of that entity and dismantles an institution that was conceived, built, and created by agricultural producers over generations. We think it's a shame, simply, that the current government had criticized the previous government for that measure, and yet is only continuing to implement that change that was made. We are going to vote in favor because the impact would be negative on agricultural producers otherwise, but we raise our objections with regards to what happened with the Canadian Grain Commission.
Canadian Grain Commission or Canadian Wheat Board?
Canadian Wheat Board, rather. The Canadian Wheat Board.
The Wheat Board, yeah.
So he's on the wheat. Any further discussion? Shall clause 10 carry? On division? On division? Clause 11 and 12. Shall clause 10 and 11, 11 and 12 carry? On division? On division. Clause 13, Mr. Caron, you want to pull it up.
Merci.
Thank you. Increasing the value of the deduction for residents of the Canadian North in order to help people who live in communities that are often very remote, and as we know, it was made public, often have to deal with extremely high prices. We're disappointed with regard to this measure. It was not indexed to inflation, which means that that particular deduction is going to erode over time. And so we favor this measure, but we wish it would have been indexed. Thank you.
Any further discussion on clause 13? Shall clause 13 carry? On division? Clauses 14 to 21. Any discussion? On shall clauses 14 to 21 carry? On division? On division. Clause 22, Mr. Caron.
Moving a little bit.
C'est pour le numéro 22?
Everybody's moving over.
Ok, là, on est rendu à 22.
Go ahead, Mr.
Merci.
Caron.
Alors, évidemment, on s'est posé
Obviously, we are opposing the restructuring of this measure, which was passed by Conservatives. We want to make public our disappointment that the government is replacing it with another reduced measure. It's a pseudo-reduction for the middle class, which is only going to move money to the 30% who in the highest income bracket. We're going to vote in favor because it dismantles income splitting, not for seniors, but for the rest of the public, couples with children. But we would have liked for the government to have listened more attentively when we talked about Bill C2 and reducing taxes for the middle class.
Is there any further discussion? I would remind members that if they do on some of these clauses have some questions they want to raise, there's a lot of officials here, and you're quite free to ask them to come to the table and raise questions if you so wish. So I'm not sure if members are aware of that, but if you do, just ask that an official come before the table and it'll be done. Clause 22, shall clause 22 carry? Division. On division. Clauses 23, 24, and 25. Shall clause 23 to 25 carry on division? On division. 26, Mr. Caron, you pulled it up?
Non, on peut voter.
You can vote.
Ready to vote?
Yeah.
Clause 26, shall Clause 26 carry? On division, Clause 27, any comment, Mr. Caron?
On appuie cette mesure.
We support this measure, which is included in Clause 27, but we're concerned by the fact that despite repeated promises that the details would come later, there is no plan or even any sign of a plan to create daycare spaces that are affordable. The new benefit, which is being put forward by the government, will not be able to deal with the high costs that exist in most provinces. We're going to vote in favor of this measure, but unfortunately, it does not really deal with the question of affordable daycare.
Any further discussion? Shall Clause 27 carry? On division? Carried. Clauses 28 to 32. Shall clauses 28 to 32 carry? On division? Okay, clauses 33, we have an amendment put forward by
Spring Elizabeth May.
Oh, Elizabeth. Sorry, Elizabeth. Go ahead. Do you want to
Mr.
read
Chair,
your...
it's a bit perplexing for committee chairs the first time they encounter PV. C'est Parti Vert. C'est dans le dernier Parlement.
It's the Green Party in the last legislature. As usual, it was the Green Party.
To avoid confusion with the government amendments. C'est pour ça je pense que mes amendements sont.
I think that's why my amendments are indicated as Parti Vert.
I think you're familiar, of course, with the testimony of the Canadian Teachers Federation at this committee. There is, I think it's...
Just a minute, a point of order, Mr. Leipert.
Just for clarification, does the amendment have to be moved by a committee member?
In terms of the independents can move a motion at committee.
No, I'm not. I'm not moving it. Let me clarify. I'm not an independent. I'm a member of Parliament for the Green Party of Canada.
You
I
said
am
it's
here
an
based on
independent.
a motion that this committee passed over my objection. The terms of the motion should be familiar to all of you because you passed it. It was drafted by the Harper PMO in the previous Parliament. And it requires that I be here if I want to submit amendments because I will be no longer able to provide my amendments at report stage because each committee has passed an identical motion. And my amendments are deemed to have been moved. I do not have the power to move them. I don't have the power to vote. And it is entirely for the purpose of depriving me of my rights at report stage. So I'll put my objection on the record once again. But that's why I'm here, and I get to speak briefly to each amendment. I hope I still have some time.
You do have some time.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So this is a very salutary change in the tax code. I want to make it clear that I'm very supportive of introducing the concept that eligible educators, as described in subdivision A.4, school supplies tax credit, that eligible educators who are carefully defined are allowed to submit their receivable expenses as described under eligible supplies expense. It's a very well-drafted section. The only problem is the suggestion that teachers might have to obtain from their employer a written certificate to attest to the eligibility of the expenses and that it was a proper deduction that's being made. The Teachers Federation would like this bill improved by amending it such that the requirement for a written certificate from employers be removed. My amendment does exactly that. It removes subsection 3 that creates a possibility, although not a requirement at all times, that the educator obtain a certificate from their employer.
Thank you, Ms. May. Any discussion? Mr. Graywall.
Just a quick point. Employer verification of expenses is essential to the operation of the income tax code. Otherwise, it would leave a very slippery slope and lead to a very bad precedent for other employment expense claims. So it's just to keep everybody honest across the board. to ensure that when teachers do submit their supply tax credit, that it's verified by their employer. And this happens not only in the teaching industry, it happens in every industry. That's, you know, the government has done a great thing to ensure that teachers who do make students' lives a little bit more easier when they're teaching get this tax credit, but ensure, to keep everybody honest, they should be verified by their employer.
Any further discussion? The motion on the amendment, right? The motion on the amendment, all those in favor? Opposed? Amendment lost. On the motion as on the original motion, there's no further amendments? Shall Clause 33 carry? On division. Clause 34, NDP 1.
J'aimerais laisser la parole à Monsieur Jones.
I would like to leave the floor to Mr. Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Liberal broken promise will cost small business $2.2 billion over the next 4 years and kill more than 1,200 jobs. We know the government and the Liberals made a clear promise in writing dozens of times on the campaign trail, and small businesses were counting on this and for them to follow through. It's disturbing that they're breaking this promise to Canada's job creators, and even more disturbing that they're making this change in an omnibus bill, budget bill. Hardworking small business owners were counting on these tax cuts to expand and grow their business. We're urging Liberal members, government members, to stand by the commitment they made during the election and vote in favour of restoring the small business tax cuts. And I'll let Mr. Caron talk about our amendments.
I probably should indicate to committee if NDP motion 1 is adopted, NDP motion 2 cannot be moved as they amend the same lines. I think that's understood. Mr. Caron.
Alors, simplement pour expliquer que
I just want to explain that the amendment that we are proposing would carry over the cuts to carry the tax cuts. This year, the reduction would be to 2.5. The tax rate of small businesses would be 10.5%, as it was not made by the government, by the previous government, which had a schedule for bringing it down to 9%. The amendment means that the tax rate would be 10.5%, and afterwards we would go back to the calendar that was set to reduce it down to 9%, as the three main parties had committed to do, and it would be done by 2019.
I will speak in support of this amendment for the very reasons that have been articulated. I won't go into them further. Spent quite a bit of time yesterday talking about how business expects consistency, and when promises are made, especially to small business people, to help them expand their businesses, and then it's reneged on is not appropriate. So we'll be supporting this. And Mr. Chair, I'll add on to this. I'd like to call for a recorded vote on this particular amendment.
Mr. Caron.
Juste rapidement, j'aimerais souligner
Quickly, I just want to underscore that this was one of the rare times in my political experience prior to my election in 2011 where I saw all three main parties being in agreement on a particular measure throughout the very long election campaign. It is therefore extremely disappointing to see that this promise, this commitment was not respected. And before voting, I would appreciate it if one of the members of the government side could explain the reason for which this commitment was set aside. Not necessarily to explain government efforts with regards to small and medium businesses, but why this commitment was set aside when it was part of the Liberal Party's election campaign platform. Just to clarify, as the Minister very clearly said last night, we're not talking about broken promises. We're talking about a decision as part of one budget. There will be 3 more or possibly more budgets during the Liberal mandate. So I think it's I think that what you have to say is perhaps rather precipitated. Mr. Caron. what the minister said that that measure would be set aside indefinitely, whereas there was a calendar that was set and promises had been made. And the Liberal Party promised during the election campaign to reduce it by 9% by 9% by 2019, and to respect the calendar of 10.5, 9.5, and 9. It was written black and white in the Liberal Party's campaign platform.
Mr. McCollum, then Mr. Champagne.
Mr. McCollum.
Well, I've just been handed the transcript from yesterday, and I want to correct Mr. McKinnon on this, because I drove directly at the minister in my questioning about this particular issue, whether this was deferred for future consideration in budgets. First of all, it's not costed in any of the 5-year plan going forward that the minister had, and he did confirm that this is a cancelled item. He confirmed it. I have the transcript in front of me, which I would be happy to read to you. So it's cancelled indefinitely is what the response was for Mr. Monod yesterday. So I just want to clarify that it's not
point of order,
Mr. And I can
point of order.
Well, he can't say he's quoting the minister and then not quote the minister.
I don't think that's a point of order.
Can I see the transcript?
Mr. Champagne.
Collègue, M. Caron,
In fact, we recognize the crucial importance of small and medium businesses in the Canadian economy, of course. What we did in the last budget, Mr. Chair, you may have noticed we reduced taxes for the middle class. We also introduced the Canada Child Benefit because we believe fundamentally, Mr. Chair, that by putting more money in the pockets of Canadian taxpayers, that's how we're going to grow the economy. And our small and medium businesses will be able to benefit from it that way. I participated in pre-budget consultations throughout the country from Moncton to Yellowknife, and what small businesses said was that we needed to grow the Canadian economy, and that's how we would have success. The measures that we included in the budget are the ones that, when we talked about small and medium businesses, when we understand the structure of the industry in the country, it's Canadians. If Canadians have more money in their pockets to invest, and to invest in the Canadian economy, our small and medium businesses will be doing better. That's why we introduced a whole host of measures in the last federal budget that will help small and medium businesses.
Mr. Johns first, and then Mr. Leipert.
Mr. Chair, the Liberals made a promise to cut taxes for the middle class, but anyone earning less than $45,000 doesn't get a tax break. So these are people, business owners, some of them don't have children. They're going to be left behind. They get nothing. These are people where Liberals knocked on their doors and made a promise that they were going to get a tax cut of 2%. So what are they saying to those people on those same doorsteps now? That they're not going to get a tax cut for the middle class, that those don't earn $45,000, and they're not going to get the 2% small business reduction. That's two failed promises. So I think that the government has an opportunity right now to honor the promise they made to small business people, and they deserve it. We've had decades and decades of tax cuts for Canada's largest corporations. This is the first time all parties agreed to cut taxes for small business. This is an opportunity to honor that commitment right now, today.
Mr. Leipert.
I think it's also important to put on the record, Mr. Chairman, for the Parliamentary Secretary that he was here when the Canadian Federation of Independent Business testified before our committee. They also made it very clear the number of the small business owners fall in that so-called 1% tax increase. So not only did the small business owners not get it, many of them not get a tax decrease as promised by the Liberals in the election campaign, the Liberals have actually increased the personal taxes for many of the small business owners. So for the Parliamentary Secretary to sit there and talk about a middle-class income tax cut when in fact the Liberal government raised taxes for many small business owners is a bit rich.
Mr. Caron, Ms. Raitt first, and there's only about a minute left in your party's time in this discussion, and the same with Mr. Caron.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just going back to the definition of deferred, according to Merriam-Webster, it is withheld for or until a stated time. Last night, in testimony, the minister indicated, we've decided at this stage it's deferred, and if there's future information to be provided, we will certainly provide it to you. I have no further information at this time to answer that question, meaning that there is no time associated with the term deferred. Therefore, it is not an appropriate use of the term deferred. It is indeed cancelled.
Mr. Caron.
Broken promise.
Très rapidement, en réponse
Very quickly, to respond to Mr. Champagne. it's clear that what was put forward in the argument was apples and oranges. There's commitments made by the Liberal Party with regards to taxation of individuals, of taxpayers, and in terms of, and talked about the child tax benefits, and there were commitments made when it came to taxing SMEs. Saying that they do no longer need to respect the commitment made to SMEs because commitments were made towards individuals makes no sense at all. The fact is that in the Liberal Party's campaign, there was 11 to 9% tax cut. All three parties had similar platforms. The fact is that in this Budget Implementation Act, we are only keeping the first reduction of 0.5%, which had already been in the previous budget, and we're eliminating the clauses in the Act on income tax that allow for further reductions. Those are the facts. The arguments of the Liberal Party do not make any sense.
DP, is there any further discussion? Shall the amendment carry? We want a recorded vote. Shall the amendment carry, clerk? You got a point of order? We'll take it.
I'd just like you to actually rule to Mr. McKinnon that their question cannot be called in committee. So calling the question all the time, and I don't think he realizes is wasting his breath.
Okay, that's fine. Lots of new members here. Go ahead, clerk.
Mr. McKinnon?
On the amendment.
Ms. O'Connell? No. Mr. Sabera?
No.
Mr. Grewal?
No.
Mr. Ouellet? Ms. Ray?
Yes.
Mr. McColman?
Yes.
Mr. Leifert?
Yes.
Mr. Caron? Defeated.
Lost. Amendment is lost. NDP 2. Mr. Caron.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, l'amendement fait...
Thank you very much. The amendment would propose reducing SME taxes by a quarter point for next year, a half point for the following year, and 3/4 of a point for 2019, which allow us to reach the objective which had been set out by all three parties during the election campaign to reduce the tax rate to 9% instead of 11% for the same reasons. Once again, I cannot understand how members on the government side vote against this amendment when this is a commitment made in black and white in the election campaign.
And Mr. Champagne.
For the same reasons as articulated previously, this is just another way to get there, perhaps a little more palatable to the government, I would hope, on a more gradual basis. Makes a lot of sense, makes a lot of sense to the small business community. I've correspondence and have had many discussions with small businesses, and this correspondence comes from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, how important it is to their members, the cost to their businesses that we're planning, investments into their companies. So a commitment is a commitment, promise is a promise. The government can slough it off and say, well, you know, more people will spend money at businesses because they got the child benefit, but that's a pretty weak argument for companies that actually drive this economy, employ over 80% of the people in this country, and could hire more if they had this incentive, if they had it go in place. So I can personally completely support the NDP trying to get there through this amendment. And I would also, Mr. Chair, like to call for a recorded vote on this particular amendment.
We'll do a recorded vote when we get there. Mr. Champagne.
I just want to state for the record and then to my colleagues, I think this government has honored its commitment to the middle class by reducing tax to 9 million Canadians in this country, by providing more money to 9 families out of 10 on an average of $2,300. I can assure you that if the middle class is doing well in this country, small businesses will do well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I've been very lenient here. This isn't your motion, Mr. John, so I'm going to stick with Mr. Caron. You okay with that?
To speak, you mean?
Okay, Mr.
To
Jones.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah.
To speak on this, my honourable colleague talked about 9 million Canadians benefiting from the middle class tax cut. There's 17.9 million Canadians that aren't going to benefit from that tax cut. There's also a small business community. These are the people who are building our communities, and they have been given a promise that you are going to give them a tax break of 2%. You're failing to deliver on this promise. Here's an opportunity to break it down over the next 4 years to ensure that you're going to deliver on the promise that you made them. I think this is a very reasonable opportunity for government to give certainty to small business and ensure that you're fulfilling the promise, although it be delayed, but ensure that they get the promise that you knocked on their doors, that you promised Chambers of Commerce and the Federation of Independent Business that you were going to deliver. So this is an opportunity to come back to small business and say that you're going to deliver on the promise that you made them and all those people that are left out in your proposal right now.
Any further discussion? Turning to the vote, then recorded to vote, clerk, on NDP 2.
Mr. McKinnon? No. Ms. O'Connell? Mr. Sorbera? Mr. Grewal? Mr. Ouellet? Ms. Raitt? Mr. McColman?
Yes.
Mr. Leipert?
Yes.
Mr. Caron?
Amendment is lost. On clause 34, shall it carry? On division? You want Mr. Caron? 34.
No, recorded vote, huh?
Recorded vote, clerk.
Mr. McKinnon? Ms. O'Connell? Mr. Sorbera? Mr. Grewal? Mr. Ouellet? Ms. Raitt? Mr. McColman? Mr. Leipert? Mr. Caron?
The motion, the clause 34 is carried. Clause 35, there is an amendment by the NDP 3.
Et cette fois-ci, j'aimerais passer la parole à Monsieur Angus.
I will give the floor to Mr. Angus.
Mr. Angus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's been 11 years since I've sat at a committee with you. It's nice to see you again. Let's not wait another 11 years before we meet again. Two swords lengths
right
away.
across from each other, Charlie.
I'm just trying to buy some extra goodwill with them as I talk. So, this amendment is to we recognize that the government has finally understood that they need to do some work with the mineral exploration community and extending the mineral exploration tax credit for 1 year. However, that is not sufficient to create the kind of climate that we need in terms of stability for development and exploration when we've seen a 90% downturn in exploration since 2007. We've seen layoffs across Canada in terms of exploration projects. Prospector Developers Association have been calling for at least a 3-year extension so that we can get the kind of financial climate to bring investors back into Canada for exploring. I think part of this is based on the great uncertainty that the exploration community has about the Liberal government's commitment. We remember in 2005 it was the Liberal government that killed the flow-through shares mining program. They didn't believe in working with the sector. We've seen zero commitment on the Ring of Fire. This is a development that will have huge impact for generations to come. There's really 3 pillars if we're going to develop exploration and develop resources in Canada. Number 1 will be strong relationships with Indigenous communities so that they are able to fully benefit. Number 2 is strong environmental regulations so that these projects are credible. But number 3 is creating a coherent financial climate to bring investors into these developments because many of them are very high risk. They're long shot operations. They go through many downturns in an economic cycle, so it's very hard to maintain economic interests of investors if we do not have a climate that's stable. So having a mere 1-year extension of the mineral exploration tax credit doesn't cut it, particularly when the government is telling the industry they're going to have to justify why they need these basic supports for supporting investments. So what the New Democrats are saying, this program works. We have to get this industry working because Northern Canada is being left behind in the economic renewal. Many of our provinces, it's a major driver, particularly in northern regions. So if we have a 5-year extension, it will provide the kind of economic certainty for investment so that we can start to get these projects off the ground.
Angus, is there any further discussion on this point? Hearing none, shall the amendment carry? Mr. Caron?
Un vote nominal.
You want a recorded vote?
Recorded vote.
Madam Clerk.
Mr. McKinnon, Ms. O'Connell, Mr. Sorbera, Mr. Grewal, Mr. Ouellet.
No.
Ms. Ray? Mr. McColman?
Yes.
Mr. Leifert? Mr. Caron?
The amendment is lost. Shall Clause 35 carry? On division? On division. Clauses 36 and 37, shall they carry? Clause 30 carried, 36 and 37. On division?
30. You'd like to, okay.
Mr. Caron?
Yeah.
Oh, you want to speak in 36?
Oui,
Okay.
rapidement, c'est pour dire
quickly.
que le crédit
When the tax credit was abolished by the previous government, we had to fight to try and reverse the decision. The tax credit is very important for venture capital. Canada is among the last countries in the OECD in terms of venture capital. There are countries like Israel and United States that are doing very exciting things, and we should base ourselves on them. We're towards the bottom of a number of jurisdictions within the OECD. Quebec is actually just behind Israel and the United States in terms of venture capital, but that isn't the case in all provinces. We have to remember that private companies involved in venture capital support the tax credit for the Workers' Fund because the two work together. Currently, 160,000 jobs are maintained by the capital that's provided by this Workers' Fund. If the capital had been reduced and eventually eliminated, 20,000 jobs would have been lost. My only regret is that the tax credit was not returned to 15% as the Liberal government had committed to do so during the election campaign. The commitment was to return to 15%. This year, it's at 5%.
Clause 36 carry? On division? Clause 37. Clause 37 carry? On division. Clause 38, and I know there's a Liberal amendment. Who's ever moving that? Mr. Sabero, before you do, I have some questions on this. This relates to the Canadian Wheat Board. Is there a representative here from Finance or Agriculture that can come to the table? Mr. McGowan, welcome. What's his position? Could you state what your position is, Mr. McGowan?
I'm the Senior Legislative Chief in the Tax Legislation Division in the Tax Policy Branch of the Department of Finance.
Okay, and I do know that the issue in the Wheat Board relates to taxes, but I think you should be aware, Mr. McGowan, and the government should be aware, that this committee passed a recommendation that the federal recommendation 48, that the federal government provide Western grain and oilseed farmers with a full and transparent accounting of the disposition of the Canadian Wheat Board's assets since the Marketing Freedom for Grain Farmers Act received royal assent, and of the effects on the grain handling and marketing system since that time. Now, I went back, Mr. McGowan, and looked at the various annual reports of the Canadian Wheat Board, and the last one I can find is 2011-2012. That's the last time there was a full disclosure on the Canadian Wheat Board's financial position for the 2011-2012 crop year. There's a lot of that ended in July 31st, 2012. When I look at that annual report, the Canadian Wheat Board that year was an operation with revenues of $7,213,000,000. And if I go to the report, it states in the report, in the annual report, that on October 18, 2011, the Canadian Wheat Board received a directive through an order in Council, PC 2011-2011-1182, that all profits or gains relating to non-pool programs be transferred to the contingency fund unless a different position of those profits or gains is required under the Act. And it goes on from there saying the surpluses were indeed transferred. Under the terms of the Interim Act effective August 1st, 2012, the balance of the contingency fund was transferred to a new contingency fund, and the upper limit for the fund was removed. Under the Interim Act, in addition to the uses of the contingency fund previously permitted under the Act, the Corporation may utilize the contingency fund for any activities set out in the annual corporate plan or on the approval of the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada with the concurrence of the Minister of Finance. Not to get lengthy on the matter, Mr. McGowan or whoever can answer from Agriculture Canada eventually, what we have is pool accounts, non-pool accounts, the contingency fund being changed, an operation that was dealing with $7 billion in terms of revenues, and the public does not have an accounting of what happened those monies since then. We don't have an accounting. We as a Finance Committee and as a government should be concerned. It's not an issue whether Wheat Board or no Canadian Wheat Board. The people of Canada transferred another, and I believe it's $349 million to cover various issues relating to the Wheat Board being, the old Wheat Board being shut down, cover pensions, so on and so forth. But we don't have an accounting of that either. I can go into the annual report here and it will spell out how many hopper cars the Canadian Wheat Board had at the time. Greg Meredith, Assistant Deputy Minister, was before this committee, and I'll not get into the quote, but he basically said that there was a loss, and therefore there was no assets to be dispersed to Western grain farmers. Well, where's the data? You know, the public of Canada needs to see the data. We're making a decision here in terms of tax issues related to the new Canadian Wheat Board, but we do not know the disposal of the old Canadian Wheat Board, and I think the public should darn well know. And that's why I'm raising this point. I mean, do you have anything to say on it, or can you provide the information? We do have a recommendation from committee, and whether you're pro-Canadian Wheat Board or anti-Canadian Wheat Board, it's beside the point. The fact of the matter is, we should know what happened, the assets of the Canadian Wheat Board since 2011, 2012. I can go back and I can show you annual reports for 30 years where you knew what the demurrage was, where you knew what the administration cost per bushel was, where you knew what the return to the farmer on every bushel of grain that was sold in whatever pool account it was. And now we don't know. So I'm asking you, Mr. McGowan, can you provide us with information whether there was assets, if there was assets or liabilities, what happened to them, and why has the public in Canada, and especially Western grain farmers, not been given a full accounting on that issue?
As noted, I am with the tax policy branch, and as such, would be happy to discuss any of the tax matters contained in the bill. The specific questions about the implementation of the privatization transaction with the Canadian Wheat Board is something that I think would be, as noted earlier, within the realm of the of Agriculture Canada, and that's why in a previous committee hearing, Mr. Meredith had come in to help us out with those sorts of questions, and that is something that would be in much more in their capacity to provide. I can speak to the tax measures of the bill, though.
Okay, I understand that, but I guess you can understand I'm not exactly satisfied with the Assistant Deputy Minister's answers that he gave us previously. I went back through the minutes. I'll not quote them. They're not answers at all. They're not giving a full accounting what happened, the assets or the liabilities for that matter. The Canadian Wheat Board and the public should know. If Mr. Meredith or somebody else can provide us written answers on that, we would, at least I would, we would appreciate that. Mr. Champagne.
Mr. Chair, just want to confirm, I was conferring with officials. We take your point very seriously. This is a very serious matter for Canadians and for the committee. So we'll get back to Agriculture Canada and seek to get a written response to you, Chair, that could be shared with the member of the committee, because that is a very serious matter for all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Champagne. Mr. Sabero, you any further discussion here? To Mr. McGowan, Liberal 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The amendment I propose, if we can just read it. Bill C-15 implements certain provisions of the budget tabled in Parliament on March 22nd, 2016 and other measures. One of the measures proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to include rules that apply in respect of the continuance of the Canadian Wheat Board under the Canadian Business Corporations Act. The motion ensures consistency between the English and French language versions of Clause 38 of the bill by correcting for an editorial error in the English language version. The correction adds to the English version the words a Canadian partnership at line 30 on page 41. The amended text appears in proposed paragraph 135.2, bracket 4, bracket B of the Income Tax Act. The amendment ensures that a Canadian partnership is not deemed under the paragraph to be a designated beneficiary under an eligible trust.
You're moving.
I'm moving the motion, yes.
Moving the amendment.
The amendment.
Mr. Caron.
On est ici devant un autre.
We're here before another symptom of what confirms the definition of omnibus bill. Because in omnibus bills, and we've seen it in the past, since 2011, we have bills that are so big, so vast, that there are corrections that always need to be made, which could have been avoided if more time had been spent on bills and if the time had been dedicated differently.
I don't believe that's related to this clause.
I'm sorry?
I don't believe that's related to this clause. I don't think we're on topic.
Well, it is, because the government is actually bringing its own amendment in this to correct an oversight. That's due to the length and the complexity of the bill that we have in front of us. And I would submit that this is not a first. It happened also in the past, either corrected within this committee at the time it's studied or corrected in future omnibus bills, as we are actually witnessing some mistakes. So once again, I think it's relevant because it's likely the only amendments that will be adopted by this committee will be coming from this side to actually correct mistakes that were made in the preparation of this bill. We'll still be voting in favor because it's correcting an oversight, and that's important, but I wanted to put that on the record.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the amendment? Carried. Clause 38 as amended. All those, shall it carry? I'm seeing on division. Okay. Clauses. Mr. Caron, you gave us a. There's no amendments from clauses 39 to 46. Is there any issues you want to, any clauses you want to pull up? Thank you, Mr. McGowan. My apologies for not thanking you. Shall clauses 39 to 46 carry on division? 47, clause 40 carried. 47, NDP 4.
One quick second.
Voilà. Alors,
there it is. This is a clause that talks about sharing information with the Canada Revenue Agency, and since the beginning, with the technical briefing, we had concerns with regards to privacy. Concerns that had to do with this clause, and even this committee, whether it be in this legislature or previous legislatures, often heard that there were concerns that had been raised not only by certain MPs, but also by the Privacy Commissioner and other stakeholders. The Commissioner drew attention to this fact when certain measures with regards to privacy were included in conservative legislation without appropriate supervision. So what we're proposing with this amendment is to require that the Canada Revenue Agency produce a report on the frequency with which these new powers are used. This is a supervisory measure, which I think is essential to ensure that all Canadians are reassured with regards to the possible excesses that this type of measure could lead to. So we're not asking for a profound change. We just want the Canada Revenue Agency to produce a report on the frequency of these new powers with regards to their use.
Open for discussion. NDP 4. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, shall the amendment carry? Did you say recorded vote?
Yep.
The mic comes on after you say it. Okay, recorded vote, Madam Clerk.
Mr. McKinnon. Ms. O'Connell. Mr. Sorbera. Mr. Grewal. Mr. Willett. Ms. Ray. Mr. Leipert. Mr. Caron. Mr. McColvin. Yes. Yeah. Let the record show.
Let the record show he nodded his head.
Defeated.
Amendment is lost. Clause 47, shall it carry? On division? There's no amendments from 48 to 59. Does anybody have any clauses they want to pull up? Shall clauses 48 to 59 carry? On division. Clause 60, Green Party, PV2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you can see, my amendments have derived in good measure from the Canadian Teachers Federation's concerns. There is a list at school supplies tax credit that ties into the creation of that credit in Clause 33. In Clause 60, we find A to D how the tax code purports to define allowable prescribed durable goods. In other words, that a teacher would buy in one school season materials that would be used in the next year or years after and would still be eligible for credit. The point made by the Canadian Teachers Federation was that it really isn't helpful to enumerate an exhaustive list of non-consumable items a professional teacher may deem necessary. And what my amendment does is very simple. It just creates a catch-all, Clause E, other goods that have a life expectancy of more than one school year. Now, they still have to meet the definition of an eligible school material in the earlier section of Clause 33. You can't buy something that isn't of educational value, isn't important for teaching, and so on. So having described what an eligible teaching supply should be in Clause 33, Clause 60 now purports to prescribe very specifically what one would consider a durable good for a school. And clearly books and games and puzzles and containers and educational support software are durable goods, but the professional teachers have said to us, please, be a bit more flexible. There may be other things a teacher wants to buy. So my amendment is put forward. I hope it will have a fair opportunity to be passed now. It does no damage to the tax code, and it meets a concern of an important group in our community, the very one that the government has spoken to in helping teachers out by providing the school tax credit, school supply tax credit. Let it not be prescriptive to this extent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. May. I do have to do a ruling on this amendment. Bill C-15 seeks to amend the Income Tax Act and related legislation by introducing a refundable tax credit for specific teaching supplies. Amendment PV2 attempts to add a category of prescribed durable goods eligible for the tax credit. As the House of Commons Procedure and Practice, second edition, states on pages 767 to 768, quote, since an amendment may not infringe upon the financial initiative of the Crown, it is inadmissible if it imposes a charge on the public treasury, or if it extends the objects or purposes or relaxes the conditions and qualifications specified in the royal recommendation, end of quote. In the opinion of the Chair, the amendment would relax the conditions and qualifications specified in the royal recommendation. Therefore, I rule the amendment is inadmissible. Clause 60, as is, does it carry? On division. There's no amendments on 61 to 66. Is there anybody wants to pull up a section? Shall clauses 61 to 66 carry? On division. Clause 67, NDP 5. Mr. Caron.
Once again, this is a provision that has to do with sharing information with the Canada Revenue Agency. What we are proposing in the amendment is to ensure that the Canada Revenue Agency produces a report that would be tabled in Parliament with statistics on the frequency with which these new powers are used. I would like to emphasize that I've seen members on the other side vote against a simple change that would have allowed for more supervision, a more serious supervision of these powers, and they voted against that proposal. Before we move to a vote, I'm wondering if there's any justification to refuse a report on the frequency of the use of new powers granted to the Canada Revenue Agency. I want to be able to understand the objection on the government side.
Do I have, is there any further discussion on this point? Mr. Greywell.
The CRA already has existing safeguards in place to protect against the improper use of this information, and we'll work with the Privacy Commissioner, and we'll continue to work with the Privacy Commissioner to minimize any compliance concerns and implementing and administrating the proposal. And this is an ongoing review that happens every year as well. So this would just become, the record-keeping requirement would not add to the taxpayer protections, which is the most important thing for the CRA and for this government.
Mr. Caron.
I'm trying to understand. We all represent members of our ridings. That's the case of all 338 MPs. Those voters are going to be impacted by these changes. Their data might be shared under these new powers that have been granted to the Canada Revenue Agency. I don't really understand, again, the objection, because what we're asking is that the agency produce a report and table it in Parliament, produce a report to all of the elected officials whose voters are affected by this measure, and yet I'm being told that this is not necessary. I'm trying to understand how the member on the government side sees the difference between information given to the government that they are part of and reports that are made public to all of Parliament, which is all of Canadian citizens represented in this House.
All those in favour of the... Mr. Crow?
Vote nominal, s'il vous plaît.
Recorded vote, please.
All those in favor of Amendment NDP 5, Madam Clerk.
Mr. McKinnon? Ms. O'Connell? Mr. Sorbera? Mr. Graywall? Mr. Ouellet? Ms. Raitt? Mr. McColman? Mr. Leipert? Mr. Caron?
The amendment is defeated. Clause 67, shall it carry? On division? There's no amendments 68 to 74. Any sections to pull up? Mr. Caron.
71,
71. 71.
Shall clauses 68 to 70 carry?
Yep.
On division? Carried. Clause 71, you have a point to make, Mr. Caron.
Rapidement, je peux dire qu'on est heureux.
Very quickly, I can say that we're happy to see that the government is continuing its efforts to legitimize and officialize efforts made by the NDP to remove taxes on feminine hygiene products. I'm glad that my efforts by my NDP colleagues have borne fruit in the current legislature and that this measure has now been made official. Thank you.
Your point's been made. Is there any further discussion on point on clause 71? Shall clause 71 carry? On division? Clauses 72 to 74, shall they carry? On division? Clause 75, NDP 6, Mr. Caron.
Oui, la troisième fois. En anglais, on dit.
Yes, for the third time. Third time's the charm. We never know. I still don't understand the government's objection. I hope that members on the Liberal side understand the difference between information that is sent to the government and information that is given to the entire Parliament and therefore the entire Canadian public, which we represent. There's not one single member on the government side in this place, in this room currently. We are Canadian MPs who represent different ridings and different voters. How can we be against a measure that is only intended to produce a report on the way that new powers, which have been granted to the Canada Revenue Agency, that there's no accountability being asked of the agency with regards to these new powers? I'm convinced that every one of us, if we were to consult our voters, that with regards to the CRA's access to information about them, that they would be concerned and that they would be reassured by a measure that is intended to increase the accountability of the Canada Revenue Agency. The agency giving a report to the government is one thing. Nobody in this room would have access to it except for perhaps the parliamentary secretary. Giving it to all of Parliament, tabling it in the House of Commons, that's the essence of our parliamentary democracy. Once again, if there's an objection to more accountability, I would really like to hear it.
Any further discussion? Recorded vote? Then, Madam Clerk, recorded vote, NDP Amendment 6.
Mr. McKinnon? Ms. O'Connell? Mr. Sorbera? Mr. Graywall? Mr. Ouellet? Ms. Raitt? Mr. McColman? Mr. Leipert? Mr. Caron?
The amendment is lost. Shall 75 carry? On division? There's no amendments 76 to 81. You pulling up one?
Une pause de 5 minutes avant de commencer la quatrième partie.
Could we have a 5-minute break before starting section 4? Are we at the fourth part now?
I think we're okay with that. Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
People can grab a sandwich maybe. Thank you. Suspended for 5 to 7 minutes. That's what you'd call a PEI, 5 minutes. We stretch it. Highland time. All right, turning then to clause 76, 76 to 81. Was there any wanted to be pulled up? Shall clauses 76 to 81 carry on division? Just, sorry, Guy. We'll let you make your point, but they are carried.
J'aimerais retirer 79.
I'd like to withdraw 79.
Okay. 79. Go ahead.
Est-ce qu'on vote pour le reste ou non?
Are we voting on the rest or not? Or should I talk about 79 now?
J'ai fait plusieurs interventions sur le sujet.
I've spoken about this subject several times. These would affect the Balanced Budget Act. Our concerns are not so much eliminating the act, except that it's a retroactive change to prevent the government from being in an illegal situation, which it would be tomorrow, June 1st. That change, that retroactive change of a situation in which the government is involved, is a problem for us when it comes to rule of law. I heard the comments of the parliamentary secretary with regards to the fact that Parliament is sovereign, but that does not take away from the fact that the government is withdrawing from its obligations under an act that is imposed upon it. The Treasury Board, who was my colleague on finance, Mr. Bryson, when the Conservatives were doing the same thing, changing a law retroactively, that's a government, the Conservatives, that is, through this abuse of power, changing an act retroactively in order to make legal what was illegal at the time. The government, when it was opposition, criticized those types of measures and yet is now seem to be moving in that direction and to embrace these retroactive changes, which I would remind you go against recognized principles of rule of law, even though it is possible for a sovereign parliament to act in this way. It's what the Liberals are currently doing, and that is why we cannot support retroactive changes as they are made. Eliminating this act should have been simply done with the consequences of not respecting an act which had been voted upon by a previous government.
The section on division. Clause 82, CPC 1, Ms. Wagenthal. Moved by Mr. McColman. Was Ms. Wagenthal, you a comment?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to express for the record that the official Conservative opposition was prepared to support C-12, the Veterans Budget, when presented as a standalone bill in the House, which we applauded, and the veterans deeply recognized as timely and would have been very effective in ensuring that the funds allotted to them would have been out the door sooner. With this first amendment, the Liberal government has changed the formula for the earning loss benefit from 75% of a corporal salary as the minimum to 90% of a senior private salary, and this could result in lower payout for veterans. While the Liberals are claiming that they're increasing the earning loss benefit, lowering the minimum benefit threshold to a senior private salary instead of a basic corporal salary will result in a significant reduction in the benefits received by the most vulnerable injured veterans. This amendment would safeguard the financial support from the earning loss benefit to ensure it could not be lowered for any veteran. The earning loss benefit is an important source of support for our veterans that were injured through their service to Canada. It's important that the Liberal government's budget not in real effect reduce this benefit to veterans that served in the lower ranks of the Canadian Armed Forces. Just recently, the Veterans website was updated with the budget information, and the rationale there was that they had to make this change because otherwise some veterans would be receiving more income than serving armed force members. But yet at the same time, we are penalizing the lowest income veterans who are the most vulnerable. So this amendment would basically ensure that it would not have the effect of reducing the inputted income to an amount less than the amount that would have been determined before the coming into force of Section 82.
Mr. Champagne.
I'd like to call as witness, we have representative from Veterans Affairs. I don't think that what the member said was accurate, so we'd like to correct the record and have the official answer that question.
Could officials come forward, please, and state your name and title, if you could. Ms. McIntyre, Director General Policy and Research Division, Strategic Policy and Commemoration with Veterans Affairs Canada. Welcome, Ms. McIntyre. Go ahead. You heard the motion?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much. So I guess just the earnings loss benefit, it provides income support to veterans while participating in rehabilitation, as well as support to those who are unable to be suitably, gainfully employed once rehab is complete. So it's part of a suite of programs that Veterans Affairs Canada offers in terms of reestablishment to promote, support, and encourage wellness, independence, and successful transition to civilian life. So the earnings loss benefit is designed to replace lost income and therefore has always directly corresponded with the veteran's salary at the time of release or the minimum level, whichever is greater. And changes to Budget 2016 do not impact this. Veterans, with the proposed amendment, so if passed, if the Bill C-15 is passed, veterans would have previously received 75% of whatever their salary was at the time of release, and now they'll receive 90% if Bill C-15 is passed, or the minimum, whichever is greater. So what is paramount in looking at this modification, the 75% to the 90%, is that injured veterans have access to benefits that allow them to focus on recovery. So all veterans will benefit from the increase of 75% to 90%. And again, being paramount is that support that they require during recovery. And with the adjustment, that is a pre-release salary or the minimum, whichever is greater.
Thank you, Ms. McIntyre. Any questions, Ms. Wagendahl?
We're all in agreement that these programs are all in place to help them to become successful once they're released from the forces. So are you saying to me that you're talking about a minimum, that minimum in no way is going to be less than any veteran right now is receiving?
The minimum will, it's complicated because it is an individual calculation, and it will depend on offsets. So it will also depend on employment earnings that the veteran might have. The benefit itself, that increase in the benefit, will apply to all eligible veterans, so that 15% increase. For those who are at the minimum, their increase would not be of 15%. It would be around a 5% increase from the minimum to the minimum because of that adjustment as well. But again, an individual veteran's circumstances would differ depending upon offsets in terms of employment earnings.
Anything further, Ms. Wagendahl?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
In conversations with individuals who are determining these for themselves, they are finding that they are actually going to be earning less with the change in the threshold. And that's the concern for that particular part of their scenario. Outside of all the other things that are happening, they are actually ending up with less.
Okay. Just if I could ask for a point of clarification there, though, is that under Bill C-15 or before C-15? C-15 hasn't passed, so are they going to end up with less under C-15? Is that what you're saying, Ms. Wagendahl?
With the way that it's structured now, with the lowering of the minimum benefit threshold, that is my understanding, that it will be less for some of the lower income veterans.
Well, I guess just a point of clarification, the legislation amends the 75% to the 90%. The actual reference to the minimum is in the regulations.
Okay, Mr. Caron.
Very quickly, evidently this is something that we could have given more attention to if the bill had initially been proposed under Bill C-12 and studied independently through a committee study on an independent bill. We could have given it more time and evaluated these concerns, which are often raised. Unfortunately, the government chose to integrate it in a bill that includes a vast number of pages, and which means that the committee has less attention, is granting less attention to this matter. Thank you for coming, Ms. McIntyre. If this amendment is passed, what would the impact be? Would there be more protection when it comes to compensation? Would there be any impact on legislation? I'm sorry, I should have put the earbud on because I'm afraid I did not hear you. I'll repeat, it's hard to hear in this room. If the amendment is passed, would this lead to greater protection? Are these changes likely to be useful? And would they reassure veterans when it comes to their compensation? Well, I can't speak on behalf of veterans organizations, but when it comes to changing the fact that it would go from 75 to 90%, that in and of itself increases the compensation for earnings loss. That's the protection. It's going to increase by 15%. What is your interpretation of the measures proposed by the amendment? What is your interpretation of the amendment being proposed and its impact? My interpretation is that the minimum would remain as it is now in the new Veterans Charter, that there would be no change to the minimum under regulations. Have there been any recent changes, or are there changes that are going to be made? Recent changes, no. Regulatory changes will come after the bill is passed. Thank you.
Mr. Caron, Ms. McIntyre, Mr. McKinnon.
Merci à M. Caron de ces questions clarifiantes.
Thank you for those questions. We've heard the minister talk about a complete review of benefits and compensation offered to veterans, which will be revealed during this year. Can you confirm that on top of this increase to the benefit, that there will be a more in-depth review done throughout the year? Yes, thank you. Indeed, we are looking at all of the economic forecasts. We're looking at the full basket of programs, services, and benefits which currently exist for veterans. We are going to come back to Cabinet very soon, probably in 2017. So it seems clear that the situation is indeed better, and that the proposed change, the modification proposed by my colleagues on the other side, would cancel out the benefits that is being proposed under this bill.
Coleman and then Mr. Ouellette.
To you as the expert on this matter, would this cancel out the benefits as just described by my colleague across the table? This amendment, would it cancel out the benefits?
What this amendment, it really doesn't cancel them out, but in essence what it would do is it does, there's nothing that would change without the amendment either. So what's in play for budget 2016, the increase of the 15% in the earnings loss benefit is there, and that's what's being proposed
so it doesn't,
in Bill
this amendment
C-15
doesn't
in the legislation. However, as indicated, we are certainly looking at the whole picture in detail with the financial benefits review that will come forward to Cabinet in
But
the
this
fall.
amendment doesn't cancel out what's in the legislation.
It adds another element, which would then tie our hands in terms of the regulations. So I...
Je pense que c'était peut-être une erreur de traduction.
I think maybe there was a translation error. I didn't say that the change proposed by the Conservative would cancel the benefit, that it would cancel the benefits of the budgetary measure that we are considering now.
The 15%. Mr. McColeman, are you complete?
I am, but I'd like to yield any time I have or perhaps the mover would like to speak to it again.
Okay, we'll come back to the mover. I have Mr. Ouellette, then Mr. Caron, and then we'll come back to Ms. Wagendahl. Mr. Ouellette.
So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, this is, it's very, very interesting. As someone who was in the Army for a very long period of time, who had friends who served, who lost legs in Afghanistan, they go over as a private because this is real. This is not something that's abstract. And I guess at the end of the day, what I want to know is if you're a go over there and you're private, and you come back and you can't, because of universal serviceability or your ability to serve in the Canadian Forces, you can't, do the rucksack march. You can't get promoted to corporal. And you're now released from the armed forces. And you're now, 25 years old. You have some PTSD. You have other issues. Are you going to be able to see, because the pay of a private is a lot less than a corporal. There is that substantive jump when you get, you move up in these ranks. And my concern is, can you make this a little bit less abstract for me and, make it a little bit clearer? Is there an actual benefit to, especially these lower ranks within the Canadian Armed Forces, the young people who are actually going over into these hard places and serving Canadians? Because not everyone goes over as a sergeant or as a major or lieutenant colonel. We're talking about some of the, our youngest people in our country who often might not have as much education as other people or as life skills or all sorts of other things. And I just want to make sure that they're well protected. And I'm hearing stuff here and I want to make sure that, I want to know what your intent is because it's very concerning to me.
Okay, certainly. Thank you very much. And indeed, this is about individuals who have served our country. And this benefit in particular for those who have become injured or ill because of a service-related, for the most cases, eligibility is tied to that. So to make it concrete, and I guess I'll just say too that this is only one, as I said earlier, part of a whole suite of programs that exist under the new Veterans Charter to support independence, wellness, and reestablishment. So that's currently, the benefit is payable at 75% of a basic corporal, which is about $3,500 a month based on 2013 rates. 90% of a senior private with the proposed change would be about $3,700 a month. So there is an increase, but again, when we increase the amount of the benefit, we did look at the minimum. The intent of the policy and the rationale is to ensure sufficient support for the needs of these individuals while they recover.
You had also mentioned previous to that you could also see an increase according to your progression in what you might have had in the ranks. Is that still?
That, sir, is another program. So it's the Permanent Impairment Allowance, Career Impact Allowance, which is the proposed title change. It's another one of the amendments that we're proposing under Bill C-15. So an additional benefit that's available to individuals from an economic loss perspective. And there's also the Disability Award, which again we're increasing to $360,000 proposed under Bill C-15 for a non-economic loss award.
Thank you both. Mr. Caron.
Une question très simple encore au niveau de
A very simple question when it comes to interpreting the amendment that is proposed. Would I be wrong to believe that, at the end of the day, the amendment would have the effect of withdrawing discretionary power from the hands of the minister and giving it back to Parliament by changing those provisions?
Regarde, je le relis. Donc, c'est certain que ça ajoute dans la législation un besoin de comment que le règlement serait indiqué. Regarde, oui. Okay, sorry.
Try it again.
Okay.
In the booth.
Oh.
Try it now and see what happens.
Donc, pour répondre à...
To answer your question, what it does is that it adds in legislation an element that something must be added to regulation. Right now, there's no reference in legislation that income being attributed at a lower level. I can't really comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Caron. Ms. Wagenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in closing, the intent originally was to increase to 90%, but the fact that it has been adjusted to change the minimum benefit threshold to a senior private salary instead of a basic corporal salary impacts the lower paid veterans. I understand from the website that the concern was if they didn't change that designation that some veterans would end up earning more than our armed forces that are serving right now. So the adjustment seems to have been on the high end to ensure that we don't end up overpaying, and I understand our people serving shouldn't be receiving less than veterans, but they could have, I think I would rather ensure that those of our veterans that are earning the lower level incomes would be protected and come in with, instead of minimums, maximums, and because there are a number here that are going to be facing a difference in their salary because of the change of the minimum benefit threshold. Thank you.
Okay, back to Mr. Ouellette. Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I was just reviewing a bit of the salaries here from online that we can find. So a senior private makes around $4,120 a month. A senior or a basic corporal, $4,714. Under the old rate, they would have, at 75%, they would be making around $3,535.50. Under the new charter, they would go down to a senior private, so private third, and so they would take that $4,120 times it by 90%, so you'd be getting $3,708. So in fact, you'd see an increase of $100 and some odd dollars.
That's what it is.
So they'd be better off.
Ms. McIntyre, you're shaking your head. We can't put that in the record,
fine.
but you're saying yes, I
Yeah,
gather.
those are the figures. Those are the figures that I quoted earlier. They're based on 2013 rates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. No further discussion on the CPC 1 amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Lost. Clause 82. Shall Clause 82 carry? On division? Clauses 83 to 89, there is no amendments. Any pull-ups? 88.
No, you meant going through 88, not 89.
Okay, 89 is, okay.
It's a new clause, not 89.
Clauses 83 to 88 to carry. On division? Clause 89, CPC 2.
CPC 2 is a new clause.
So we.
89.1, so there's no amendment.
Okay, I'm in error here. There's no amendment on 89, 89.1, 89.1 is considered a new clause. So shall clause 89 carry? On division? A new clause 89.1 CPC CPC 2 Amendment 2 for the Conservatives. Moved by Mr. McColman. Ms. Wagenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Veterans that are injured due to their service must have access to the necessary benefits and resources to support them. We all agree with that. However, veterans with significant mental and/or physical injuries can suffer due to delays before receiving their benefits during the transition period between leaving the jurisdiction of the Canadian Armed Forces and entering into the jurisdiction of Veterans Affairs Canada. This is something that we've seen and heard of over and over again on our committee, which is functioning very well, by the way. The federal government has a responsibility to support veterans that have been injured as a result of their service to all Canadians. In order to enhance the support that is provided to veterans, this government must also build on the process of delivering services and resources, an objective that is missing from the programs in the budget. The federal budget outlines increased financial resources for veterans, building on significant 35% increase in funding for each veteran that was an investment provided by the previous Conservative government. However, the budget does not address the procedural issues that are leaving the most vulnerable veterans, men and women, that suffer from significant physical and mental injuries at risk, not receiving the support they deserve in a reasonable time frame. This amendment will help bridge the gap between the period when injured men and women in uniform are in the jurisdiction of the Canadian Armed Forces and already require immediate assistance from Veterans Affairs. By passing this amendment, veterans that have suffered as a result of their service can immediately begin the process of applying for their benefits with the help of a Veterans Affairs representative while in the jurisdiction of the Canadian Armed Forces, expediting the current delay and ensuring injured veterans receive the support needed immediately upon exiting the armed forces. Currently, a member of the Canadian Armed Forces that is injured can be waiting 3 to 6 months before meeting with a Veterans Affairs representative, resulting in a gap between the time they leave the care of the Canadian Armed Forces and begin receiving benefits from Veterans Affairs Canada.
Thank you, Madam Weigenthal. This amendment is inadmissible. It seeks to add a new section between sections 75(2) and 76 of the Canadian Forces and Veterans Re-establishment and Compensation Act. As House of Commons Procedure and Practice, second edition states on page 766 to 767, quote, an amendment is inadmissible if it proposes to amend a statute that is not before the committee or a section of the parent act, unless the latter is specifically amended by a clause of the bill. Since neither Section 75(2) nor Section 76 of the Canadian Forces Members and Veterans Re-establishment and Compensation Act are amended by Bill C-15, it's the opinion of the Chair that this amendment is inadmissible. So I declare it inadmissible. New clause CPC 3. Moved. You are signed in, Ms. Wagenthal. If you want to move it, you're signed in, I think, for
Sure.
Lisa
Okay.
Raitt.
I'm fine to do that. Thank you.
Okay. Moved by yourself. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The federal government must enhance its services to injured veterans and provide proactive assessments and services to veterans that injure themselves during their service to our country. Many rural veterans face severe difficulty accessing the support and resources they deserve for their well-being due to geographic distance and unreliable internet availability. A constant theme from the testimony at the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs is the need for Veterans Affairs Canada to be proactive and on the ground to assess and support our veterans. Too many injured veterans suffer from vulnerable situations and deplorable living conditions due to their physical or mental injuries as a result of their service. Additionally, for injured veterans in rural communities, access to online or office-based service is not reliable. This amendment will mandate Veterans Affairs Canada to determine a policy that provides injured veterans with a departmental representative at the veteran's place of living. By providing injured veterans with in-person support at their home at the request of the veteran, the department can better assess the well-being of injured veterans and their quality of life and determine the best assistance possible to serve them. This amendment also ensures a service is in place for injured veterans in rural communities that cannot reach a Veterans Affairs office, stakeholder organization, or online support, allowing injured veterans to receive support regardless of their geographic location. And I would add this in no way impacts requirement of more funds. This is something that the caseworkers could and should be doing.
Thank you, Ms. Wagenthal. The similar to CPC 2, I also had to rule this inadmissible. It's in this case, I'll not read the clause of House Commons Procedure and Practice, but since Section 76 of the Canadian Forces and Veterans Re-establishment and Compensation Act is not being amended by Bill C-15, that's Section 76, it's the opinion of the Chair that this amendment is inadmissible. Turning then to sections, amendments, or to clauses 90 to 106, is there any sections of that block that people want either witnesses forward on or to make a comment on? Shall clauses 90 to 106 carry on division? On division. Carried. Clause 107, we have an amendment, NDP 7, moved by Mr. Caron.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. We'll move through it very quickly. We believe that Canada does have an obligation, a legal obligation, and a moral obligation to take care of veterans which served our country at great risk to themselves and often at great personal cost. Obviously, we support the compensation that is included in this bill, but as I mentioned, I think it's worthwhile to mention it again. This bill should have been studied individually, in committee, out of respect for our veterans and out of respect for the voice they could have had, which they do not have in this committee because we had to hear a great deal of witnesses in superficial fashion. We think it's unfortunate that the government is acting in this manner. I would also like to seize the opportunity to emphasize that I am very troubled, once again, that this government has chosen to continue the fight against our veterans in the courts after promising that it would end this practice. In our opinion, this is a betrayal, pure and simply, with regards to the men and women who served this country. However, when it comes to Clause 107, we have an amendment which has to deal with the different stories that were heard, that have been covered by the media, on the fact that some veterans have to, year after year, justify a permanent medical condition such as the loss of a limb. This amendment, which we are proposing, intends to ensure that the minister can ask veterans to provide information on their medical condition, but would prevent the department from asking constantly for information on a condition that is considered to be medically permanent from a medical point of view. In a sense, that would end that particular insult that we are dealing to certain veterans who have to justify the loss of a limb year after year after year. I hope that this amendment will find support among the different members of this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Caron. Is there any other committee members? Mr. Champagne?
Contrary to what my colleague said, if you consult veterans, veterans are pleased to see that we've brought forward $1.6 billion to help veterans out of respect for our veterans and the service they have made to our country. If you talk to veterans groups, they are happy to see that there are budget measures. In the first Liberal budget presented by Mr. Trudeau has measures for veterans. I just want to say to my colleague that it's the law of unintended consequences that applies here. Even if the amendment presented can seem good in principle, its effect in certain ridings, or rather circumstances, would impact on cases where information must be asked for again, for example, in the case of a change of address, to avoid sending payments late or not having them sent to the right veteran at all. This could lead to administrative problems because on occasion, yes, we need to ask veterans for the same information again in order to make sure that they're receiving benefits quickly benefits which they are entitled to under legislation in place in Canada right now.
Thank you, Mr. Champagne. Mr. Caron, and then Mr. McCollum.
Oh, si M. McCollum n'a pas encore parlé, je peux lui
I can give the floor to Mr. McCullen.
Vote on this one?
Yeah, okay. Mr. Caron?
En fait, encore une fois, l'explication.
Once again, the explanation doesn't make any sense. We don't deny that there's greater compensation being given. However, we cannot deny that the government is continuing to pursue cases before the courts and is appealing some decisions. That is also a fact. When it comes to the amendment that we're proposing, for some situations like a move, we'll continue the current practices, which for certain veterans, and there's more than one, who have a permanent condition from a medical point of view. We're not talking about something that can change. We're talking about something permanent. And we're going to continue to force them to provide this information year after year after year, because it's possible that a few veterans might move, and it's possible that we might ask them for more information. For me, that doesn't make any sense. If we want to end this insult, where veterans have to justify the loss of a leg year after year after year, this is the amendment that we need to pass.
Any further discussion? You want a recorded vote, I gather? Nobody needs to hear from any witnesses. Okay. Madam Clerk.
Mr. McKinnon, Ms. O'Connell, Mr. Sabera, Mr. Grewal, Mr. Ouellet, Mr. McColman? Yes. Mr. Leifert, Ms. Wagenthal, Mr. Caron.
The amendment is lost. Shall clause 107 carry? On division? Is there clauses 108 to 188? Is there any that need to be brought up or heard from witness? Mr. Caron.
I would like to talk about Section 5, please.
Section 5, starting at clause what?
Juste un commentaire sur l'ensemble de la section.
I just have a general comment on that entire section.
All right. Might as well make it now, and then we'll go to the vote.
Alors,
Section 5, Division 5. Part 4, Section 5. Part 4 deals with the matter of recapitalizing the banking system. That's a measure that is extremely important, which is extremely sensitive because it's changing the way that our banking institutions will be protected in case there is indeed a serious problem that could undermine their sustainability. We are not opposed to a solution like recapitalizing banks, or rather bailing them in, but I think it's a problem that this committee, for part of legislation that covers about 20 pages, it's extremely technical, has not examined in depth the consequences of these provisions. This is the Finance Committee. We have a responsibility to hold the government to account when it comes to the proposals it puts forward. They could be good, and they could be proposals that are subject to debate, but we have a responsibility to study in depth measures that are going to be extremely important for future years, which are going to be extremely important for our economy. Making radical changes to the way that we save our banking institutions with a minimum of debate and a minimum of questions asked should lead us to reflect on the role of this committee with regards to our function, which is to hold the government to account when it puts proposals forward, and that has not been done. Mr. Campbell came and answered a few questions with regards to the consequences. That's an official, and I would like to thank him because those were useful answers. But did we have anyone from a banking institution? Did we have any analysts that, independent analysts that studied these provisions? We could have talked to somebody from the from various banking institutions. There are people who are worried about this. These aren't necessarily concerns that I share, but they're concerned about the abuses that could be associated with the recapitalization of banks. For example, a situation like in Cyprus, where savings were seized in order to recapitalize banks. That's not what is in this bill. I admit it. I agree. But the concern exists. And we haven't had the opportunity to look at it in any significant way. Furthermore, once again, some of these provisions are not in the legislation but will be part of future regulations. And those regulations could be changed at any time by the government, by the Governor and Council. It's important to ensure that there are safeguards. We don't have any guarantees. This section of the bill having to do with bailing in of banks is one of the most important and complex matters in 4 years of committee work. It was studied in an extremely superficial fashion, and so I don't really know what else to say to help committee members realize how important the work that we do for public finances, but also for the Canadian economy, and to act in such a almost cavalier fashion with regards to something that is so crucial and technical leads me to doubt the justification and the proper function of this committee. Even though we are not opposed to the provisions being put forward by the government, neither can we support the way that they're acting. This part of legislation should have been tabled separately in order to have it studied carefully, and that was not the case.
And comments are basically on Division Part 4, Division 5 as a whole. We're not on any specific clause. I believe we've Mr. McKinnon. I would like to, though, I know these folks are in the room because I spoke at a panel this morning. There's a delegation just walked in the room who are with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, so our colleagues in other parliaments with that institution, I'd say welcome, and I know all our members will be in best behavior just because they're here. Thank you. Mr. McKinnon.
I would like to reassure my colleague across the way that we are not in Cyprus, far from it. We will avoid those types of situations. If possible, Mr. Chair, I would ask Mr. Campbell and any other officials associated with this particular division to step forward.
Mr. Campbell, what is your question, Steve? Just wait a moment. Mr. Campbell, Mr. Dossel, Ms. Dossel, and Mr. Robertson. Mr. McKinnon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good to see you again. Could you explain, Mr. Campbell or Ms. Dostal, the consultation process that occurred? Perhaps start at the beginning. What was the genesis of this idea? What form of worldwide collaboration was undertaken? And what were the specific steps in consulting with stakeholders and clearly financial institutions, and any others you may care to mention since the genesis of this proposal?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question. The Department of Finance has been in consultation with respect to the provisions here, but with respect to the bail-in regime more broadly on a very consistent basis over the past several years. As you may be aware, there was a consultation paper issued by the Department of Finance in August of 2014. However, even in the run-up to that consultation, there were extensive consultations with the industry and other interested stakeholders. That includes banks, investors, and others who'd be impacted, possibly impacted by the development of this regime. We've been in continuous contact, actually, through the development beyond the consultation paper, through, as I say, through the continuation of the development of the regime, and will continue to do so as the regulations, if the legislation passes, as the regulations are developed to continue to implement the regime.
Anything to add to that, Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, just one supplemental point, if I may. While this bill has been pre-reviewed in the other place in Parliament, I can say, and not speaking for them, but the Canadian Bankers Association, representing all of the affected institutions, have come forward to suggest that we had consulted and they were supportive of introducing this regime and quite consistent with standards internationally. I'm not speaking for them, but I am referring to them being on the record in that regard, and that we also have consulted widely in past months with both the investors as well as the various institutions, and collaborated closely internationally with all our peer jurisdictions to make sure that we are consistently following the guidelines set out by the Financial Stability Board and the G20, because while this is an important provision to ensure financial stability in Canada, we also want to make sure that our institutions and investors are treated the same globally, so that there's an equal platform upon which that banks operate, and also that investors participate in that as well.
So, may I proceed? So, if I'm understanding this, these are measures that are being adopted across the G20, the OECD countries.
That is correct.
And yesterday we heard the minister, however briefly, on these measures. I don't have his exact words in front of me, but if memory serves, I think he qualified that all of these dispositions, all of these measures are being undertaken in the extremely remote chances of a looming failure and impending failure of a recognized financial institution. How would you qualify that?
Well, far be it for me to qualify the minister's statements, but I think he reflected the sentiment that this is a provision that is designed to protect customers and depositors, hence that all deposits are excluded, and it really is to keep the institutions operating. And from a broad point of view, this is one measure that we hope never to test, but it's adding one element to the toolkit of many tools that already exist under the CDIC Act and provisions for authorities. So from a large system point of view, this is one extra feature. It's important, and we hope that we never test it. That being said, it's important to ensure that even under hypothetical scenarios, our system works sufficiently to give confidence to investors in the Canadian financial system.
Belt and suspenders, as it were.
I'm going to have to interpret that, Mr. McKinnon. What do you mean?
Belt and one assurance on top of another set of assurances.
That would be correct.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Mr. Champagne, do you still want to come in, or is it?
No, I think the official have made the case. We have had extensive consultation. The minister has testified. The official have testified. We have consulted broadly stakeholders. So I would think that the comments from Mr. Caron on that are just not accurate. The facts are quite different, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Severa and then Mr. Caron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to add, this has been we need to put on record, this has been a multi-year process evolving from the global financial crisis. So there has been extensive consultation with the Canadian financial institutions and with global financial institutions, and that as the minister stated last night, that similar legislation in terms of winding up a failing bank or anything to that extent exists in a number of countries, and we're just adopting similar legislation, really, and evolving legislation to where the UK or the United States and many of the European countries are. Is that not correct?
Yes, I would affirm that statement.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Caron.
I'll say it in English because I think that nobody has understood what I said in French.
Did amazing work explaining what this bill is about, or what this part of the bill is about, and thank you for this. It's been really informative, and the work that the department has done on this, it's no reflection on the work on the department. But saying that there's been consultation, there has been no consultation in this committee. This is what we're responsible for. We're the ones who are going to be voting on these on behalf of our constituents. Mr. Campbell, the department is not voting on this. We are. So we need to do our work. By this thinking, this rationale, we don't even need to discuss it here. We just need to vote, because why should we have extensive study of this legislation, not only with the department, not only with the officials, but broad consultation. If the banking institutions have been consulted, I would like to know exactly what was said in those consultations because I wasn't part of them. But I'm sitting in this finance committee. I've got a responsibility to actually study and analyze and bring scrutiny to what's being proposed by the government in this. This is the role of the MPs from the government side as well. And we didn't have a chance to do it on this bill because it's been integrated with 179 pages of legislation. So I'd like everyone here to reflect on what their role is in this committee. Our role is to keep the government to account on what it's proposing. If everybody here is satisfied with just having assurances from the department, the minister, and the officials, why bother to actually have consultations with witnesses? No need, because we have assurances. This is not something that we should be accepting at face value. This is very technical. This is very important for the future of our banking system, and we've only superficially addressed it over the course of this study. This is far from being the way things should be. And I'm certainly hoping that this is not a taste of what we'll be facing in the next 4 years. Because honestly, this doesn't reflect well on our democracy. This doesn't reflect well on our role as member of parliaments. It doesn't reflect well on the role of this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Caron. I could have ruled you out on relevance, but I figure it was relevant to what the committee does. You're off the list now, Mr. Champagne. Mr. McKinnon.
Je dois beaucoup de respect pour mon collègue et nous devons...
I owe my colleague a great deal of respect, and I respect Parliament as well. We refuse, however, to accept that you tell us how to behave over the last while with regards to this bill that we've been studying for several meetings now. We are diligent, and we will remain so in the future. You're aware of the breadth and scope of all the details. That being said, we also have a responsibility towards those stakeholders to make sure that Canada is passing regulations that were discussed at an international level, subject to consultation with industry, and is there to reassure those who make deposits in our financial institutions. We also have the responsibility as parliamentarians to regulate and to ensure that our financial system is equivalent to worldwide financial institutions in other countries. It's difficult for me to accept the criticism from the member on the other side when we are reassured, when we regularly pass bills whose provisions have a broad scope, but the intentions are relatively clear. When it comes to what you said about officials and people who explained these provisions to us, it seems that 8 or 9 years after the financial crisis, that we are implementing measures that we hope to never have to review again. I hope that this is the last time we discuss it. That being said, being accused of not taking our responsibilities seriously as parliamentarians leaves me rather perplexed. And I find it difficult to accept all of that.
We come back on track. Mr. Caron, I'll give you one last comment, and then we're going to the sections.
Oui, en fait, mon commentaire ne va pas sur...
My observation doesn't have to do with the content, but with the fact that these are measures that are part of the OCDE. I'm not saying that we should not pass this measure. It's very good, and I may vote for it. That's not the issue. The issue is we have legislation that's 20 pages long, part of a bill that's 179 pages long, and we haven't had a single witness discuss that situation. Whereas with any other committee, when there's a 3 or 4 page bill, there are 6 witnesses. I would persist in saying that we have not done our jobs. I'm not saying that our job, if we had done it, would have led to a different result. I'm just saying that it is our responsibility to analyze in depth legislation as important as this, and we have not done so. It's not a comment on the work of the officials or the department, or even the quality of the legislation. I am persuaded, however, that in other countries that passed similar laws, they looked at it more in depth, more than we have when it comes to these provisions.
108 to 188. Shall clauses 108 to 188 carry? On division? On division? Carried. A new clause 188.1, BQ1. Is anybody here to make a point on that? Go ahead, Miss Paz, Madam Paz.
Oui.
Posé?
Posé, oui.
Posé,
Merci.
thank you. My apologies.
Alors, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, last week we learned that the federal government is going to go forward with the automatic registration of old age security for people 65 and older, but not before 2018. The minister had confirmed this information in the House yesterday during question period. The amendment that we are putting forward is that automatic registration be implemented immediately, along with the passage of Bill C-15, not in 2018. A bit of history. Since 1993, the federal government know that some seniors are being affected when it comes to their ability to obtain those benefits. People have fallen through the cracks, and they have ended up at food banks. For 15 years, the federal government has said that it's going to ensure automatic registration, but that's not what it did. It did automatic renewable. That's a good step. But 19% of seniors do not receive what is owed to them. My amendment says one thing, that's enough. It is time to act now in order to automatically register seniors for the guaranteed income supplement, which they are entitled to. Thank you.
I will have to rule this amendment as inadmissible. It is an amendment that amends BQ1 seeks to amend Section 11 of the Old Age Security Act. As the House of Commons Procedure and Practice, second edition states on page 766 to 787, an amendment 767. An amendment is inadmissible if it proposes to amend a statute that is not before the committee or a section of the parent act unless the latter is specifically amended by a clause of the bill. End of quote. Section 11 of the Old Age Security Act is not being amended by Bill C-15, so it's the opinion of the chair that this amendment is inadmissible. Clause 189, NDP, inadmissible. Clause 189, NDP 8, Mr. Caron.
Merci. En fait, 8, 9, 10.
Thank you. 8, 9, 10. All 3 amendments deal with the same issue. Obviously, we're happy to see that the government is acting in order to respect a commitment which had originally been put forward by the NDP. The Liberals' commitment was a bit different, but its effect was to increase the benefits for the GIS. The Prime Minister were pleased that the government acted in order to lower the age of eligibility for old age security from 67 to 65 years, which required a legislative change. We think, however, that the government, in order to completely fulfill its commitments and promises, when it comes to the guaranteed income supplement, we have to recall that during the election campaign, the Prime Minister said that he would increase income for seniors living alone and would do so immediately. Unfortunately, this bill is proposing an increase as of July 1st. That's about 8 to 9 months after the election. All three amendments intend to ensure that this increase of the guaranteed income supplement be retroactive to January 1st in order to make sure that the government's commitment is fully carried out and to help those seniors who need it most. Thank you.
On NDP 8, I would, in the opinion of the chair, the amendment would impose a charge on the public treasury. Therefore, I'd rule the amendment inadmissible. I think, as you know, Mr. Caron, the House of Commons Procedure and Practice, second edition, states on pages 767, 768, quote, since an amendment may not infringe upon the financial initiative of the Crown, it is inadmissible if it imposes a charge on the public treasury or it extends the objects or purposes or relaxes the conditions and qualifications specified in the royal recommendation. So I declare that this amendment is inadmissible. Clause 189, shall Clause 189 carry? On division? Clause 190, NDP 9. Yes, sir.
I'm not trying to anticipate anything, and I'm certainly defer to your judgment in making various interpretations and rulings on amendments. I'd just like to clarify, is it your intent to rule on these after the amendments have been explained and put, as opposed to ruling on them prior to, just in thinking of the efficiency of the committee's time?
Yes, it's normal practice that the motion, the amendment is put by the mover or the promoter, and they usually, as is practice, they have the right to explain why they believe that amendment should go forward, and then a ruling is made on the amendment at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
NDP 9.
Écoutez, ça a la même conséquence.
Listen, it has the same effect. It's to ensure that benefits for the guaranteed income supplement be retroactive to January 1st. Once again, to ensure that the government respects its commitment to increase that benefit immediately and not wait until July 1st.
Thank you, Mr. Caron. Same ruling on this. It's the opinion of the chair that the amendment would impose a charge on the public treasury. Therefore, I rule the amendment inadmissible. I'll not go to the section. The same section I mentioned in the previous motion, so I declare it inadmissible. Clause 190. And I would also say that NDP 10 is also inadmissible as a result as well. Clause 190, shall Clause 190 carry? On division? Clause 191. Shall Clause 191 carry on division? There's no amendments to from clauses 192 to 206. Is there any sections that anybody wants to pull up or wants a witness to come to the table on? Okay. Shall clauses 192 to clause 206 carry? On division? Carried. Clause 211. NDP 11. Oops.
No, the other page.
Oops, I'm too ahead of myself, am I? Jeepers, I thought we were making great progress there for a minute. Oh. Yep. PB3. Is anybody here to speak to PB3? PV3, Green Party? Mr. Marcel. No?
Parti vert, pas là.
Pardon, Mr. Caron?
Green Party isn't here.
Isn't here, so it's not been moved, therefore.
We'll just say what it is. It's probably, I suspect she's talking about the long tenured worker and having looked into the definition.
Anyway, she's not here, so it's not moved. It doesn't stand.
It's deemed moved.
It is deemed moved? Okay, so we do have to deal with it. My mistake. it's deemed moved, nobody to speak on it. I would rule the amendment is inadmissible. BC 15 seeks to amend the Employment Insurance Act by increasing benefits for long-tenured workers. Amendment PV3, PV4, and PV5 attempt to remove all references to long-tenured workers from the bill. As the House of Commons Procedure and Practice, second edition states on page 767 and 768, quote, since an amendment may not infringe upon the financial initiative of the Crown, it is inadmissible if it imposes a charge on the public treasury or if it extends the objects or purposes or relax the conditions and qualifications specified in the royal recommendation, end of quote. Therefore, in the opinion of the Chair, the amendment would impose a charge on the public treasury by relaxing the conditions and qualifications specified in the royal recommendation. Therefore, rule the amendment is inadmissible, and it also applies to PV4 and that ruling and PV5. Turning then to BQ2, is there somebody who wants to speak to that? Mr. Marcel.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, merci.
Thank you. Amendment BQ2 and 3 aim to restore the presumption of innocence for workers who ask for employment insurance. That would lead to the passage of BQ3. The idea is to restore justice for those who are unemployed, who are treated differently because their employer is a member of their family. We presume with this amendment, right now, we presume that people who work for their family are committing fraud. It's unique in terms of legislation here. Even members of organized crime have presumption of innocence before being declared guilty and having their benefits cut off. Someone who's unemployed is not someone who's committing fraud. This has to apply to everyone, including the unemployed. The presumption of innocence. A person who is unemployed should have the right to the presumption of innocence in order to have benefits, even if they work for a member of their family, and that's what the amendment says.
Thank you, Mr. Marcel. I would also rule that, in the opinion of the Chair, these amendments are inadmissible, both BQ2 and BQ3. The amendment seeks to add a definition in the Employment Insurance Act in relation to BQ3 and seeks to amend Section 5 of that Act. The House of Commons Procedure and Practice, second edition, states on page 766, 767, quote, an amendment is inadmissible if it proposes to amend a statute that is not before the committee or a section of the parent act, unless the latter is specifically amended by a clause of the bill. Since Section 5 of the Employment Insurance Act is not being amended by Bill C-15, I would rule that the amendments are inadmissible, and that applies to both BQ2 and BQ3. Clause 207, shall Clause 207 carry? On division. Clause 207, a new clause, no, that's, we dealt with that. Clause 208, shall Clause 208 carry? On division. Clause 209, there's an amendment, BQ4. Go ahead, Mr. Marcel.
Pour l'amendement BQ4.
For Amendment BQ4, which affects the following amendments. Those have to do with access to EI. This amendment is probably the most important of all because it affects the greatest number of people. The EI system is supposed to be insurance, and when it was written in the 1930s, it was indeed insurance. When Quebec accepted the constitutional amendment to implement the social program, it was a true insurance policy. It was to make sure that people did not end up in poverty if they didn't have a job, and less than 40% of the unemployed are entitled to EI. Less than 40% for women. For young people, it's even worse, less than a third. We would proposed to bring the requirements to 360 hours, unlike the current system, because right now the government does not contribute to EI. It just goes and pulls money out of it. And this is impacting people who need access to those funds. Someone who works in Gaspésie who losing their seasonal job does not have access to EI. These amendments would lead to better access to the EI program.
Thank you, Mr. Marcel. I would rule that due to the need for royal recommendation that this amendment is inadmissible. BQ4 seeks to amend Section 7 of the Employment Insurance Act to reduce the number of hours of insurable employment required to qualify for benefits. Therefore, as it states in the House of Commons Procedure and Practice, second edition, page 767, 768, since an amendment may not infringe upon the financial initiative of the Crown, it is inadmissible if it imposes a charge on the public treasury or if it extends the objects or purposes or relaxes the conditions and qualifications specified in the royal recommendation, end of quote. The amendment does propose to relax the conditions and qualifications specified in the royal recommendation, so it is inadmissible. That was BQ4. So, 209. Clause 209, shall Clause 209 carry? On division? 210, I have BQ5, BQ6. Okay, 210. Yes?
For the sake of time, our timing, and I don't want to take up a lot here, but I have been on committees and chaired one that it was appropriate at times, given the conditions, it would be at the chair's call that you could, on clauses, as Mr. McKinnon had said, rule on them perhaps prior for a time-saving initiative. That is your prerogative, and I just would ask that you consider that, sir.
Okay. To BQ5, just wait till I have a look at it. Let's see how much time this is going to take. Can you tie BQ5 and BQ6 together? And we'll give you a quick comment. Keep them as short as you could. Because we are going to rule based on the royal record.
Oui, BQ5 et BQ6.
Yes, BQ5 and 6 have the same orientation as the following BQ amendments, including 11 to 13. So I would propose to withdraw those amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Marcel. Clause 210, shall Clause 210 carry? On division. Clause 211, NDP 11.
Oui, 11 et 12 vont dans le même sens.
11 and 12 are along the same lines. Essentially, what we want is to ensure that the extension of 20 weeks of benefits for 1 year applies also to long-tenured workers. Under the legislation, long-tenured workers are excluded from this extension. We don't see why. Essentially, we would like them to be considered as eligible for this extension.
Thank you, Mr. Caron. I would rule this out of order because it requires a royal recommendation, so I would rule the amendment is inadmissible, and and that's on NDP 11, and that ruling would apply to NDP 12. Shall Clause 211 carry? On division, we are not going to finish the before question period. Do people want to break till 3:30? There's a lot of amendments in 212. So I would suggest we may break now and come back here at 3:30 and understand there is votes later today. And just so the committee knows, it doesn't mean they need to stretch it out. but people have been asking for pizza, and they've ordered pizza for supper. So,
Mr. Chair, on a
go
point of
ahead,
order.
Ms. O'Connell.
I'm just wondering, since we will be breaking, if you could perhaps let the members know which clauses or amendments you will be ruling out of order, so they can determine if they want to speak on it when we return, or if they want to withdraw it. Just for, again, saving time.
I don't think I can until we get to them.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, no, we are sitting across the hall in the next room, so we can't leave our stuff here. So we come to 237 at 3:30. Meeting adjourned till then, or suspended.
Adjourned.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.